All right, click the links for Odyssey, BitChute to join the channel, become a member, or do a support through the various links. So everyone will bend over for China. Yeah, pretty much. Not everyone. I mean, The Simpsons bent over pretty hard, and South Park seems to be giving them the middle finger as often as possible. South Park is an interesting Trey and Matt. South Park, like, you're not going to get South. The reason with South Park and It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia is they grandfathered themselves in. It's like, that's why if you're doing something, you got to be offensive right from the start and just give them a big FU. So it's like they know that they have no redress of grievances. They can try to complain. You're simply like, we were offensive right from the start. Our first episode, we started off making fun of Christians, and you didn't have a problem with that. So I want to go after everyone else. How about you just have a big glass of shut the heck up juice? Okay, so he who pays the piper calls the tune. First, think back 40 years ago to the film and TV environment in the background of the USA. That was 1981. That was a very different environment in which to sell a film. Film and concerts were culturally way more important because there were fewer distractions. Like 81, people were listening to records, and there was like, I don't know, depending on what area you're in, you might have like 3 main channels and then like KQED and then 2 local channels. You might have a half dozen channels. Things were different in 1981. So things where people put money into were like, they were magical events, and it's hard to explain that to these young whippersnappers. Stay off my lawn. Things were more important because there were just fewer distractions. When MTV and Atari 2600 came out in the 80s, that was kind of one of the first nails in the coffin. So a movie was more of an event, and a good concert was like a magical event, especially if you got laid at the concert. And that's where mommy and daddy. That's where daddy met mommy, and that's where you came from, at some concert. Oh, was it consensual? Oh no, we were completely shit-faced out of our minds. So, do you remember having sex? Was it technically not consensual? Oh, whatever. It's just how we did things in the 1980s. So we got married, and now here you guys are. Oh my God. It's like, I don't know how to explain that to these young people. It's like, that was life before, until very recently. It's like, that was how a lot of us got here. Okay, so is this too base for YouTube? A movie was more of an event. A good concert was magical, almost. So films got bigger, but they get less important over the years. You try to explain 77 Star Wars to someone who's under a certain age, and they just don't get the impact. There was nothing like 77 Star Wars at the time when people went to the theaters, and you look back at there's various cuts of Star Wars: The New Hope, and but you can find the original cut on BitChute. Though you have to search Google to search BitChute, because BitChute in their own search algorithm crap. And you look at it and you're like, oh, this is, it's a pretty rough movie. But then you look at the other science fiction films that were coming out in the 70s, and that's like the reason it hit so big was because it's like they took it seriously, where other sci-fi films were not taking themselves seriously. And plus, you had lightning in the bottle with the 3 main actors. So you think how much film, TV, and concerts have changed just in 40 years. Everything is ephemeral. It's in and out of the psyche in a flicker. I'm talking about the modern stuff now, and look to the future and like, what's that stuff going to be like? But things are speeding up, accelerating. The post-2020 woke agenda is not going to stop. And the normies think that, the movies have to make money, and they're just chasing a dollar. It's a publicly traded corporations. They have articles of incorporation. They're following the Delaware rules, and they're just out for a profit. Oh, what is the color of the sky in your world? How can there? It's funny because there's left-wing and right-wing people who really believe that. They're that effing naive, and it makes me absolutely insane. No, you don't understand the hidden economic system in place that allows propaganda films to take a loss. It's one, the winners can cover the losers, and they will gladly do that if they can push propaganda. They don't understand that this is a religion for most of these people at the top. And there's actually an article in Bounding into Comics, so some archbishop is talking about the new woke religion. It's like, you're so close. You're so close. Just pull the trigger on that last bit. So if money was important to movie companies, they would find a bunch of pretty blonde people and put them in films. I'm saying if money was important, they would make films that made money. And no, it's not easy, but they're not even trying. It's not rocket science either. Like at one point, that was a pretty basic formula to make films, and they had more successes than failures. Where nowadays they have more failures than successes because they're not trying to make money. They're trying to make propaganda and stay in business as long as they can. But even if they burn the business, well, like a business may be a jural entity, a jural person, but the individuals that make up the business, they're not going to be put in debtor's prison. They're just going to leave the business and go to another business. They go, oh, but they can't possibly bankrupt Disney. What happens if they do? I mean, the people at the top, they don't give two shits. Once they've got beyond a certain amount of wealth, like they can make a lateral move to another company. They can start their own company. The goal is propaganda all along. And the people at the bottom, the 95% who actually run the company, the people at the top don't care about those people because the country in which they operate is just a commercial zone. There is no there when there's no nation there. It's just an economic zone run by NGOs and billionaires. A lot of this stuff requires you to think differently, but it doesn't require you to think more complicated. Think simpler, wash off the brainwashing, and analyze it like a kid or stranger who doesn't know the history. Just look at it and describe what you're seeing. Oh, hey, look, 2 raccoons are making love in front of me. God, that was embarrassing for all of us. They don't put a bunch of skinny blondes in movies, not because it won't sell. It will. It absolutely will. Blondes are very attractive, and they're very rare. Blonde hair, blue eye, it's like, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's ultra rare. It's an ultra minority. And the thing is, they don't want you to see them as attractive. They want you to see them as something other. They want to be portrayed in this negative, shining, dark light. They are dehumanizing them on purpose. Look at it as if, I almost said autistic. I don't know if you can say that on YouTube. As if you don't have these, you get high and you see things without all these filters in place. Like you see 2 people and like, oh, I don't think these people like these other people. And it's like you see that without all the politically correct filters in place. Anyway, so Hollywood globalists are taking off the mask and stepping on the propaganda gas, but it's actually happening at the wrong time because mainstream media has less of an impact now than it has ever had in the past, and it's weakening every day. Yes, an Avengers movies is going to make billions of dollars, but there are not that many of them, and they're in and out of the memory so fast. That's what I'm talking about. They're like Guardians of the Galaxy, like people were trying to say it roughly compares to, the original Star Wars. And it's like, it just doesn't. And if you're not beyond a certain age, you just don't get that. You don't see why it's not culturally impactful and important. The personal impact of 70, and the thing is, like, you can prove it. You look back on YouTube's get tons of documentaries on the original filming of Star Wars. 50 years from now, you think you're going to have documentaries on Guardians of the Galaxy? Absolutely not. The personal impact of 77 Star Wars does not compare to the Disney 2015 films. Kids watch Disney, but they're looking at their cell phones half the time. I mean, they're watching at home. If maybe they're in their theater, but they're still on their cell phones. But most of the time, half the time, they're watching the stuff at home, and a lot of the stuff doesn't have rewatchability, and they're watching it while distracted. It doesn't affect the same areas of the brain. My point is, I wonder if they went too fast and are losing control of the narrative, and I think they are. Movies were more important in the past, and they had less propaganda. Yes, I know that old films had some globalist propaganda, and in the philosophical approach, all stories can kind of be thought of as somebody's propaganda, which is why I distinguish between globalist propaganda, which is anti-European, and anti-civilization. It's like, oh, episode 12, episode 14. I can't help but notice that there seems to be a missing number 13. No, there's not. It's fine. Just move on. Now film and comics propaganda is so heavy-handed that it is unwatchable. I think some of them know this, and they still double down. They can't help themselves. They're also on Team Accelerate, whether they know it or not. And as they lose control of the narrative, they are desperate to shut down alternative voices. Because for the simple reason, for every minute you're listening to alternative media, they lose out on that chance to brainwash you. That's the beauty of the thing, is that there's only 24/7. So the mainstream media narrative wants all of that 24/7. That's why BitChute, Odyssey, World Truth Video, whoever is hosting content, and Gab and all these other alt sites, they look at those and like, we got to shut those things down. We have to control what goes into people's brains. Good luck with that, because there's an exodus from the mainstream propaganda because it's so heavy-handed. It's like you look back and you watch stupid movies from the 80s, which I occasionally look back on, and like, yeah, there was propaganda back then, but it was so light. Like, the movies in the 80s, their main goal was to make $1. And now it's completely inverted. Their main goal is to push propaganda as long as they can without going into the red ink. So they also make bad decisions. Like, these, getting focused, these people they're not gods, emperors of the earth. They make bad decisions, and they have an Achilles heel in the sense that they don't see how loathsome they are. Like, a rattlesnake doesn't see itself as a rattlesnake. It just sees itself as normal and sees everything else as prey, I guess. The censorship on YouTube got so bad that it gave BitChute, Odyssey, Rumble, World Truth, and all these other sites a chance to blow up. It seems like everyone is on multiple platforms these days, which is great because, it's harder to shut it down. The mainstream content is so bad that it gives us a chance to make our own content. And the thing is, our content, the odds are we're not on board with the global homogenization. It's globalism, basically. It's like, most of us, we look at this and goes, oh, yeah, a lot of stuff is cringe. We're not on board with it. So we make our own content. And like, just naturally, we laugh at a lot of this kind of stuff. We lampoon these people, and they're in an echo chamber, and they don't see that, and they get unbelievably triggered by it. And it's like, no, I won't go any further with that. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys on Odyssey, BitChute. Join the channel, become a member. Join the Discord. It's spicy and a bit cancerous, but it's a good way to keep in touch, and it's really funny sometimes.